Hello everyone. Today we are going to be evaluating a website under the URL www.martinlutherking.org to see whether this site could be deemed credible, a worthy site for students to access for information about this very popular figure, well known in history. So we start by doing our search in Google. And you see that this website is one of the first hits when you look up martinlutherking.org. Under the hit site, we can see that it is a .org site, and according to our REAL acronym, REAL, which is a great way to evaluate a site step by step. The first step under this REAL approach is to read the URL. So that's what we're going to do. As you can tell, it's www.martinlutherking.org, and using our knowledge of URL components, we can see that it is a .org site, which reflects that it is run by some type of organization who may or may not have their own biased agenda. Again, organizations can be well-meaning, they can be nonprofit sites, but we also have to understand that that means it is an organization. And again, it could be biased. That is our first clue. So it definitely needs further investigation. But we can also tell that there are no other extensions on the URL, such as tildes or percent signs, to indicate that it is a personal page. So we keep that in mind as we continue our investigation. Again, that was the first step in evaluating the website for using the acronym REAL, R standing for reading the URL. We are going to move on to step 2, which is the E in the acronym REAL. E stands for examining the content. And so we need to kind of look a little closer at the page. Now that we've opened it up, we can see just at a first glance what it has to offer. It's definitely a picture of Martin Luther King, again, a very identifiable figure. Most people would recognize pictures such as this, and if I was a student, I would say, oh yeah, this site is definitely about the person I'm looking for information on, judging by the pictures alone. And again, images are important on websites, and most students, do link into that. It is one of the first things that you notice when you look at a website. You also notice that there are some recognizable phrases such as the dream and civil rights. And again, as a student, especially a younger student, I would be looking at phrases like that to say, yep, this is definitely the person that I remember having learned about. And it seems like when I look at words like civil rights or things like the dream, right here, bringing the dream to life, I would think, okay, this is definitely heading in the right direction. The next thing you want to look at is subtopics in the sidebar links, and they appear relevant. They're associated with Martin Luther King, historical writings. It seems pretty legitimate. The truth about King, death of the dream, the King holiday. It doesn't seem suspect if you're just kind of glancing at some of these right here. It doesn't seem to be revealing anything questionable. However, upon further investigation, we notice other aspects. Now, all of these are in big lettering, and again, they do contain links to other pages, so they are supposed to draw your attention. But when we look at other aspects, we see some things like rap lyrics. Over here, we see a quote. And if I was a student, I would think that was just a quote from King. Again, students need to be taught to read a little more critically, especially some of these quick things. And when you read it, some of the words that stand out are words that are a little suspect, such as illicit sex, and this quote right here saying, I'm effing for God. Again, these are not things that you would think to be associated with King. And so these are kind of the first flags that maybe content-wise, this is a little different from what I remember about this important figure. I don't remember hearing anything scandalous about him. And so it seems to contradict some of the things I remember learning. It should be my first red flag. The other thing that I notice is that you don't see a date of publication anywhere on the page. It doesn't appear to reveal when it was published. The only indication of a date is this link right here, Newsweek magazine published this quote, apparently, according to this site, but it doesn't actually give a publication date for the site. This moves us on to step 3 in the evaluating a website using the REAL acronym. We used R and we used E, and now we're on to A. Step 3, using the A, would be to think about the author or the owner of this page. Although you don't see it outright revealing a name of a person, if you look a little further down at the bottom, and again, this is in small print, but typically on the bottom of a page you would expect to get an author or a host name. So when you do look at the bottom, and this is something we have to teach our students to look for, of course, you see bringing the dream to life in your town. You have to keep scrolling, however, and down here it says join Martin Luther King discussion forum, and right here is where we get our first hint at who may be posting this page. It says hosted by Stormfront. To host something means to be the person responsible for putting the page up. So when you click on that, it does lead you to your next page where you're given further information about the group that is posting this page. And as you can see from the URL, it is stormfront.org. Upon investigating this page, they do very openly reveal what their intentions are, who they are associated with, and they make some pretty strong claims about their belief system. You can tell from reading a couple of these things that they are a white supremacist group, and they are very openly claiming their belief systems and defending their positions in this way. So you can tell when you further investigate that this leads us to our first substantiated claim about this page, martinlutherking.org, possibly and very likely being a very biased page that is not going to provide us with substantial facts that are unbiased. The final step in looking to see whether this site would be credible, especially if we weren't able to see that it was posted by a very biased group, would be to look at the links. L in the REAL acronym stands for looking at the links. There are 2 types of links that we should be looking at, the first being forward links. And so we can do that by first clicking on any of these subtopics right here, which provide us to links for further information on the main page. The forward links at first appear to be credible. So let's take a look at one of our first links. We go to historical writings, and it brings us to this page. The first element of this page that does appear suspect would be words like this page is still under construction, which means it's not finished. They're kind of openly admitting that it is a work in progress, and that of course means that it's going to have elements that are still not fully developed. And so that should be a flag, of course. At first glance, like I said, the links seem to be pretty official. You look down here and you see some of these forward links. In the meantime, you might like to check out these links. These are links that they are pointing us to for further information. And of course, they seem credible. You know, University of British Columbia, that sounds very official, like an educational institution. University of Nebraska's philosophy department. When you click on these, however, they don't really relate to Martin Luther King Jr. directly. They don't link to his plagiarism. They just give us some very general information about plagiarism in general and really have no direct relationship to the claim that Martin Luther King plagiarized. It's really just giving anyone information about how to identify plagiarism. But again, it doesn't link directly or substantiate any of the claims that Stormfront is making about Martin Luther King being a plagiarist, as this page is supposed to be proving. We're going to go back and check out one more forward link. We'll go to Death of the Dream. Sounds so intense. when we go to this site, you can tell it has the picture of the night before Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. And what it's trying to do is convince its audience that he was partying the night before he was shot and that he was acting in a way that the public would not respect. We have to teach our students to read very closely, and upon reading closely, you see that this site is claiming that Newsweek published in 1998 on page 62 of their magazine, they published evidence that Martin Luther King was doing some pretty scandalous things. When we read very closely, we can tell that at first they're paraphrasing. The site is paraphrasing Newsweek's article right in here. And then we look at the actual quote that they say Newsweek published, and you can tell that they kind of conveniently omitted some lettering here in the quote. And at first glance, students are going to say, oh my gosh, Martin Luther King Jr. was cursing and saying such crazy things like, I'm effing for God, which in our minds will bring up some pretty scandalous things. But it's really convenient that they left out that hyphen right there, those particular words, because in the same light, if you're an educated individual, you'll realize that those missing letters could have stood for I'm fighting for God, reflecting his cause, instead of something more illicit. So, we really need to teach our students to read closely and use their background knowledge to identify purposely omitted words that are intentionally producing a bias fact. Overall, when we look at the credibility of this site based on these links, we would realize this is not a credible site. The last step at looking in the links is to look at the backlinks. Backlinks being anyone else who has attached themselves to this site and discussed this site in general. Backlinks really reveal a hit list of sites that are discussing this page, martinlutherking.org page, and seeing what they have to say about it. So what we would do in order to have a quick backlink check is we would open up our browser and we would type in link : martinlutherking.org, and we would see how many other people are linking to this page. And if they are linking to this page, oops, I have to do it in my Google, sorry. If they are linking to this page, how are they talking about it? What are they saying about it? Are they saying that they're using it for legitimate information, or are they talking about it in a different light? And as we quickly scan our hit list, first, of course, we come up with the page itself. But after that, we see that the Huffington Post wrote an article about this page, and it discusses how it is Black registered martinlutherking.org. If we look just right here, it says immediately that it's run by a white supremacist site, which confirms that it's not a very credible host. We have the organization themselves linking to that page, stormfront.org, providing a link to that page. But if we continue down here, we have learn the truth about martinlutherking.org. We have right here, it is in fact a hate site. And then we have things like, better read that again, web hoaxes and misinformation. So you can tell that everyone except for the organization Stormfront is talking about how this site is indeed run by a white supremacist group. It is a hate site. It contains misinformation. And so it really does confirm that this site should not be used for research information and should not be seen as a credible site. Overall, students can easily be misled by identifying identifiable visual images such as the pictures that are posted on a site, and that can really mislead students, and they may not catch the more revealing contradictions. If smaller font is used or word manipulation exists, such as these quotes, they may not notice them because these visual images are what's catching their attention, or the larger text seems credible. So we really need to teach them to, evaluate closer, whether it be text that they're evaluating closer or pictures that they're evaluating closer. Just that closer look really needs to be taught to them. They need to be taught exercises in recognizing bias, how and why that alters credibility, even we can't just assume that they recognize these things. And we also need to teach them simple credibility searches, such as looking at the links and how that can reveal a lot about the credibility of a site through its associations with other sites and people who are willingly associating with that site, what they have to say about why they're choosing to link to that site themselves. And we choose topics like Martin Luther King because most students recognize Martin Luther King as a key figure and would undoubtedly be affected by how easily this can be, they can be misled. So we need to be careful, especially when choosing sites about credible figures like this, and teach them how to be more discerning and really evaluate closely. I hope you enjoyed this segment on how to evaluate credibility of sites. Thank you.